In this webisode, I explain the difference between proximal and distal compassion, and why distal compassion may offer an easier path to global compassion than proximal compassion.
Now, in any way, when we are making map of our emotion, I do not want just based on classical sort of the Indian text. Usually I describe as my lesson officer, my Guruji, because traditionally, you see, historically, we Tibetan learned all these things from Indian masters. But that's more or less classical. But
classical presentation.
But very much sort of because of the last several years as a result of our discussion. Now you find these ancient Indian sort of knowledge about emotion are very much realistic, very much relevant to today's world. So beside that, you are sort of because of the new invention, right?
So how many different mental factors or the different kinds of emotions you have found?
At the moment?
On the basis of, you see, the facial expression. So I very much want to include these things. So it is something like the dictionary of emotion up to date, right? Up to date, right? Updated.
Yes. Actually, at the moment, I have 16 emotions.
16.
16. No. It's growing. But I, not just...
So perhaps before next book come, then maybe 17.
Maybe 17.
Wonderful. That's wonderful, yes.
Then that book will be called The 17th Emotion. I want to look at a different angle. Remembering my experience with my own children when they were young, although occasionally they would come running to me with a bleeding toe that they had hit a rock, or occasionally I would act so they wouldn't fall downstairs, because they didn't realize what stairs were. Occasionally, I acted to deal with their suffering or prevent their suffering. But most of the time, I was dealing with preventing way in the future. Like, why did I give them vaccinations? That's to keep them from getting a disease in the future. Why did I insist they wear a helmet when they ride their bicycle? They weren't suffering then. So it seems to me there are two types of compassion. Proximal, where you're dealing with someone who is suffering right at this moment,
yes.
And distal.
Yes.
And proximal is much more related to the emotions, and distal to thinking and social forecasting.
So in Buddhism, there is a very similar concept. One, feeling compassionate towards the other person, seeing the immediate suffering, one, and another one is seeing the causal conditions being gathered by the person, which would put the person into suffering in the future.
So, at the moment, no experience of suffering.
Right.
Now here, I think intelligence
Plays the biggest role.
Oh, yes.
Yes. I'm going to read you a quote from yourself.
I hope that
So I pray that there's no contradiction that you're pointing to in my book.
Previously, I stated something. Now today, I found it's a little different. So I myself made base karve, big contradiction. There's some Chinese, they say, yesterday, yesterday, today is today.
No, you don't have changed your mind, I don't think.
It's a,
This is you. I'm quoting you. The first step is to be able to educate people to see the downside of a completely individualistic rather than a global concern. To recognize the pros and cons, the benefits and the disadvantages of compassion for all living beings. Narrow-mindedness, to think of one's own nation, one's own country, one's own tract, or only the West, America and Europe, not thinking about Africa, Latin America, Middle East, or Asia. So what is the benefit of that? For us to think globally is a positive benefit. The economy, the environment, and also the political system. I think with politics there is, how do you say, rivalry. So what you're saying here is that distal compassion, compassion that is focused on preventing suffering, involves wisdom and knowledge, and is accessible through teaching. While, because it is not, it is based on thought, or its absence is based on narrow-mindedness. Proximal compassion towards, I help you not hurt as you're hurting right now. That's based on emotion, and it's immediate. Now, I explain more about this topic in my ebook, Moving Towards Global Compassion, available on my website, www.paulekman.com. All the previous webisodes can also be found on my website. The next webisode will appear 2 weeks from the date this one appeared.